Ari, one of the games that we've been waiting for since the new SEC schedules came out a couple years ago. Texas, Georgia in Austin. Same week as an F1 race. The whole world will be watching Austin, Texas this week. The college football world definitely, because this is one of the games when you find out Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC, this is one of the games you want to see. Georgia goes in as an underdog. Texas 3.5-point favorite. Ari, we've spent the last few years with Georgia as the Death Star. Is Texas maybe the new Death Star?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
you don't even know what the Death Star is.
Yeah, but the Death Star is like the evil one. That's like big and powerful.
Right? It gets blown up later, but that's neither here nor there.
Then I guess Georgia could still maybe be the Death Star if they end up losing this game. I don't know anything about Star Wars, thankfully.
I don't know where Georgia's exhaust port is, but Texas might find it.
The thing about this season, Andy, has been that we are trying to find which team is this year's super team. And obviously we start at the usual suspects because the usual suspects are built in a way that used to be a prereq to winning a national championship. Those teams are Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, all three of whom have now lost.
Yeah.
Texas has not recruited to the same exact level as those three teams, but has recruited really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
Top five.
Well, and I think I would argue that if you include what Texas has done in the portal,
right,
along with what they've done in their high school recruiting, that their roster is every bit as good, especially at the top, as all of these teams we're talking about.
And we're talking about a team that lost their starting quarterback and then brought in a quarterback that could probably start everywhere else in the country because like that's the way they're.
We're also talking about a team that has homegrown talent on the offensive line that they have developed after recruiting those guys out of high school, which we keep telling everybody, you got to do it that way. That's the only way it actually works. Now we'll see if that's true or not, but Texas has done kind of all the prerequisite things you have to do in terms of roster building to get here. We know Georgia's done that.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, when they meet on the field, is Texas better than have they put together a better roster than Georgia right now?
Well, I mean, if you've been watching Georgia play the last few weeks, they're not playing peak level Death Star Georgia football. So I can understand that the thought process is there, but I also think too that it's easy to take your eye off the ball and forget that, yes, Texas was built like this before this year. They had a really good run last year, and they are equipped from a talent standpoint to exist in these games and win them. So I think that coming into it, that Texas should be favored in this game. And, you know, we just got done watching them play for the second time in person this year on Saturday, and they played a not that inspiring game, and they had a rusty quarterback, and they blew
and they won by 31 points
off the field as if they were playing a JV team. So, like, this is a very, very good football team, and I think that we should start considering, not that we haven't, but saying out loud more that they are also a potential candidate.
Is Kirby Smart going to look at the end of this game? Is he going to look out on the field and go, damn, I wish I had some receivers like that? Sure. I think he is.
And I think it's weird whenever Kirby Smart looks across the sideline and envies what players another team has.
Because, I mean, like Isaiah Bond, Ryan Wingo.
Yeah.
Silas Bolden, the play he made in the Texas-Oklahoma game to recover a fumble he had maybe like 3 square feet to work with while in motion, full speed, and managed to corral that ball and score a touchdown. Like, it's crazy.
Most athletic play from the Red River rivalry. I mean, that was an insane play. So, you know, the thing too is that we are in mid-October now, and you might be looking at a situation where Georgia could be suffering its second loss before getting to November. Like, this is like, and if Texas wins the game, then they probably hop back over Oregon as the number 1 team in the country. Like, this is a huge game stakes wise for Georgia, and a very important game Texas wise. Because
okay, let's talk about that. Because Texas ascending to number 1 over Oregon, like, that doesn't actually mean any. Like, if I'm Steve Sarkisian, if I'm Quinn Ewers, if I'm Kelvin Banks, that wouldn't mean anything to me. Like, as long as I make the playoff, it doesn't matter if Oregon's ranked ahead of me or behind me. We might see each other, and we'll beat them, and that'll be that. This is what will be going through their minds. I'm more interested in what really matters in this game in terms of motivation, in terms of circumstances, because Georgia needs this way more than Texas does at this point.
And it's interesting because if you go back and you look at the Texas pathway, they haven't beaten this yet the last 2 years. Like if you look at like what Texas has done, they made the playoff.
They beat Alabama,
they beat Oklahoma. They did beat Alabama last year.
They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. That's the same Alabama team that beat Georgia.
Yeah,
so.
You're right. That was stupid. In a game like this, at home, winning it for a second year in a row, because they did get Alabama last year, I think is a important step to being considered on the same plane as Ohio State, on the same plane as Georgia, and the same plane as Alabama.
Again, I'm not worried about being considered or anything like that. I'm just thinking about this year. And
in this year in particular, they could lose this game and still make the playoffs.
Exactly. And that is where I'm curious. What I'm trying to figure out is if you're Steve Sarkisian, how you handle the motivation piece of this, because they don't need it as much as Georgia. But what I will say, I think this is where being in your first year in SEC play helps, because Texas, all of this is new. All of this is fun. And you do want to prove something. When a blue blood team shows up at your house, you want to prove, hey, we belong here. This is our first year, but we can take this thing over right now.
Yeah, and it is like funny because the waters do get muddy. Like what I just got done talking about, it's like number one, perceived as the same level, all that stuff, like doesn't have any material impact on how the games and the season play out. But on the other hand, as a program builder, and we forget because Texas was so good last year and is so good this year that he's still at the relatively beginning stages of building Texas back up to what we remember it being 20 years ago. Like they're not that far into this build. Yeah. They're no more further into the build than maybe even Oregon is, except they happened to make the playoff last year. So I do think that winning this game, doing what they did against Alabama for the second year in a row, does play a huge factor, not just in the motivation of his team, but like the assertion that players should be coming. Like it's still a major part of the build. But yeah, like when you want to talk about like motivation,
it's a big recruiting weekend in Austin.
Yeah,
I mean, think about being a recruit on an official visit.
I mean, what's the first thing that Dan Lanning said
after Oregon beat Ohio State?
Who's he talking to? He's not talking to his fans. He's talking to the people who are watching on TV with their hand in their pants, or they're talking to recruits.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what Sark wants to do. But this is Georgia, and this is a Georgia team that needs this badly, because if Georgia loses this game, the margin for error is gone. Remember, Georgia still has to go to Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
The Georgia still has to play Tennessee in Athens. Like, this is not going to be easy the rest of the way.
And if you want to talk about motivation, Texas wins this game. They've got all the margin of error in the world.
Yeah.
They win this game. They could maybe even drop 2 of their remaining games. And I don't even know if you look at their schedule that you see 2 losses there. So like, yeah.
So if you're Georgia, if you're Kirby Smart, you've got to get this figured out. You've got to win now. And we'll see, you know, as we record this on Sunday, I was trying to figure out what happens to Kirby Smart. He shoved a Mississippi State quarterback on the sideline when he was trying to argue with the officials over something. I don't think that's going to affect this particular game. We'll see. But Georgia's not feared the way they were a couple of years ago.
No.
And I don't know if it's Alabama jumping all over them, or if it's the way they kind of played with their food against Mississippi State, against Kentucky.
Yeah.
But I don't get the sense of fear from everybody else with Georgia that you saw the last few years.
Yeah. And you know what is interesting to me too, Andy, is that Kirby Smart, there was like a natural order of things when Nick Saban left the sport, right? Like
right.
I thought,
yeah.
Kirby, like I think that people
Georgia just slots in here.
And Georgia like won 2 national championships and played for 3 in a 3-year period, right? So like they already, like Nick Saban has fooled us into thinking that what they did at Alabama could be done again. Like, and I don't know, Kirby Smart is certainly the number 1 candidate to fill that role if that were to happen. But to be in a position where Georgia could be semi close to eliminated from the playoff in the middle of October is not where I thought that they would be right now. And I don't know, you know, if Georgia is just had a tough first half against Alabama and hasn't played particularly well against overmatched teams, and they actually still are that team. But like, I think Texas losing this game probably means less for their program than it does for Georgia losing, right? Like, I don't know. Who do you think's got more at stake here? Obviously, Georgia.
It's Georgia. It's no question. It's Georgia. I mean, they have to win here, or they're in must-win mode the rest of the season. And it would be nice for them to have a little grace, because it's not going to be easy the rest of the way.
Let's play a game.
Okay.
Who's got the better quarterback in this game?
Texas.
Who's got the better offensive line in this game?
Texas. Tate Rattler's still out, so Texas, yeah.
Who's got the best receivers in this game?
Texas.
Now, the only thing that you can't probably say is running back, because Trevor Etienne and Texas's backfield got decimated by injury.
Well, and the thing is, before the season, if you said who's got the better D-line in this game, you would have been obviously Georgia.
Yeah.
Are we sure about that?
That's obvious? I wasn't even playing the game.
Yeah, are we sure about that? Yeah.
Who's got better linebackers?
It's I would say it's a push.
Okay.
So
great. Who's got better defensive backs?
Georgia.
Just even think about it a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, that's not how it's supposed to go when you play that game.
I know.
You get what I'm saying.
I know.
Right? Like, yeah. So, like, that's where we're at with it. This isn't just like a program build and a big game. I mean, like, Texas is made. They're not a project anymore.
No,
they were a
they're
project last year. They're made.
Yeah.
So, I think if Georgia goes out and wins this football game, then all of a sudden, we're all put in a pretzel, because what does that mean about Alabama? What does it mean about all the other?
I actually think it takes me out of the Alabama pretzel. Because right now in bracketology, I have Alabama one spot ahead of Georgia.
Yeah.
If Georgia beats Texas, I'm going to put Georgia ahead of Alabama.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a problem doing that at all. Now, if
you could just chalk that up to like one tough half of football.
Yeah, Alabama. Well, Alabama could also lose to Tennessee next week, for all we know. So it is at that point, I think that actually makes things a little easier for me. The question, at that point is it Georgia and Texas? Are they clearly the two best teams in the SEC? I think we'll figure all that out. But I'm so excited just to watch these two teams play, to watch the level of competition, because, we just went group for group, but that doesn't mean Georgia doesn't have NFL players at all of those spots. This is going to be.
That's not an insult to Georgia, more is a point to make about what Texas is.
Yeah, it's a compliment to Texas, but this is going to be amazing. This is going to be an incredible weekend. This is why the SEC went out and got Texas and Oklahoma. This is why Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC, to create games like this.
This F1 race is really killing my vibe, because there's not a single hotel in the Austin metropolitan area next week, and I'm going to try like hell to get down there for the game.
You can sleep. Just sleep in the parking lot of a nice taco restaurant or barbecue place.
I'm going to do, Andy?
Listen, all those people stand in line for barbecue. You can just sleep there and pretend you're waiting in line for barbecue.
Cody Belair lives there. I like Cody. Could I invite?
You're going to invite yourself to Cody's house?
Where are we right now?
I think we could do that.
I have to get down there. I don't.
How good of a friend does Cody consider you? I think that's the question.
Well, I mean, I could get to Waco too. We're going to talk about it, but like, Austin is going to be buzzing on Saturday.
Just tell Cody you'll sleep out on his back deck.
Yeah,
it's no problem.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I do want to get down there. But huge game.
The world is headed to Austin. Maybe Ari too, but the world. And we'll all be watching.